rabbi called Rabbi Alexander. As a side point, did I mention this already? Alexander is I'll actually do this next semester. We'll talk about Chanukah. Page 69. Alexander, what? Alexander the Greek from Macedonia, Makdoni. He turns up in Israel and he starts to have a good relationship with the Jewish people. The rabbis of the day made a decree that for 1 year, every Jewish boy that is born should be called Alex or Alexander. And you'll see many boys today called I have an uncle Alex, Hashif actually. And any boy who's born gets the name Alex from those days. Actually, I think Alexandra is also, I guess, you're probably direct descendants from the original Alex of Macedonia who turned up in Israel who started the whole Greek exile in Israel about 200 years into the second Beit HaMikdash, which led to the whole Hanukkah story after he died. He died very young. He was like 32, 33 years old. Okay, so there's Rabbi Alexander. Now you know why Rabbi would have a name like Alexander. By the way, there was also someone in the Gemara called Rabbi Yishmael. Is that a good name? Rabbi Yishmael, one of the greatest rabbis that ever lived. Rabbi Yishmael Omer. It's a beautiful name. Beautiful name. It had negative connotations once the Bnei Yishmael started to hurt us. Once the descendants, the Arabs of Yishmael started to hurt us, it had negative connotations. That's why there's actually a school near me called Ashar. The A of Ashar, it's a yeshiva. The A of Ashar, if I'm not mistaken, was named after someone called Adolf. That was a popular Jewish name before the Second World War. And then the Second World War came, and suddenly that name, for whatever reason, became non-usable, which is understandable. I think it's a similar kind of thing, okay? Lahavdil. But Alexander, beautiful. The name Yishmael is actually a beautiful name. Yishmael, God listens.
Do you think that people would name their kids Adolf anymore?
No. No, I would highly advise someone to not name their kids Adolf anymore.
What if somebody has like a grandfather or like a grandparent that was like that they really, really
Yeah, they're not going to do it. They'll find another A name to name their child after. I don't know if I was going to name the kid Adolf. I don't think there's not going to be too many Adolf Goldbergs knocking around town anymore. I don't think anymore. No one's going to do that. Second World War? No way.
No, it's not illegal if you want to.
Yes, it's not illegal. It's just highly inadvisable. Yes, you're allowed to do whatever you want, right? I mean, there are Jewish boys who walk around with the name Nimrod. Have you seen any Nimrods? I mean, to be honest with you, I understand why many Israelis name their kids Nimrod, because in the Torah, he's called Ish Gibor, right? He's like a very powerful person. But Nimrod was actually not such a great person. He was the one who threw Avraham Avinu into the Kifshon HaEsh, into the fiery furnace.
In Germany and France, Adolf is illegal.
Oh, it's illegal?
Yeah, I told you.
Tell Esther.
So in Germany and France, you cannot call your kids Adolf. It's illegal. By law.
Okay, but Germany and France are like, in Germany, if somebody had their kid named Adolf, that would be insane.
Yeah. But New Jersey's okay, a little Adolf walking around. Adolf Feinberg. This is my son Adolf. This is my son Pharaoh. Right, my daughter Vashti. I mean, where are we going to end over here? Okay, interesting. Names, but names are important. Okay, so Rabbi Alexander. By the way, even your English names, right, they become your Hebrew names. They're used often, they become your Hebrew name. Okay, so 100% it can. 100% it can add to your koach and take away from your koach. Why do we rename adults who get very sick? You change because your name is your mazal. So there's an idea of people who get very sick, lo aleinu, they'll change the name to say that David is sick, but David Chaim is a different person, because you're trying to change that person's mazal by changing the name. Because you go, it's a big deal. Changing a name is you have to go to someone who knows names. You should. It's a very important decision. With my second daughter, my wife had a dream. For all my kids, she had dreams of the names of each one of them. Right? She knew that the first four were going to be girls. I was in denial, obviously, being a Sephardi man, but Baruch Hashem. And the second daughter, she had a dream. Actually, spoke about it at the Sheva Barachot, because she just got married, this daughter. She said the name is Chaviva. And I'd never heard the name before. And I thought it's very strange. So I said, she said, that's the name. She wasn't hearing anything else. She said, that is the name. And we got into a whole fight over it. Like, we talking Sarah, Shoshana, Miriam, right? She said, no, that's the name. That's the name. So we went to my rabbi. And I spoke to him. And it was Erev Shabbat. And he said, don't argue over it. Too late. Whatever your wife says, do. And he said, listen, it's an unusual name. Now it's become more popular. I think this daughter started the trend. But back then it was unusual. We're going back 22 years ago. It was a little muzar. That Shabbat we named, because Sfaradim named the first Shabbat, the girl's name. I went up, so that Friday night before, I got the Chumash. I started to read through the parasha. It was Parashat Vayigash. I'm reading through, and I read the Onkelos, the Aramaic translations, the mitzvah. I don't usually do that, by the way. I try to read Rashi, but don't always read Onkelos, although you should. I'm reading through it, and the name Chaviva appears in that week. I told my wife, I said, isn't that amazing? She's like, yeah. What are you trying to tell me? She's like, yeah, you doubted me. My rabbi called me Motzei Shabbat, and his exact words, he's still my rabbi. He calls me out Motzei Shabbat, and he says, I got off the phone with you. He goes, I'm not superstitious. Those are his exact words. But I opened the Gemara, and the first name I saw was Rabbi Chaviva. It's one of the rabbis, and he appears maybe twice or three times in the entire Gemara. He said, I had to tell you. But I'm also but that's the name that appeared straight away. Also, she happened to be born on Chanukah, on the last night of Chanukah that year, Shabbat Chanukah it was, and the Rambam describes the lighting Nerot Chanukah as Chaviva Ad Ma'od. Very, very special. So that was the extra Makapatish. So you actually do get Ruach HaKodesh, you get a certain divine prophetic spirit when you name your kids. But you have to be channeled in. I have a friend of mine who was about to name his son at the Brit Milah, because the boys would do the Brit Milah. He was about to name his son, and he was about to give the name over, and suddenly he stopped. I was there, I saw this. He left, went to talk to his wife, came back and gave the name. So I said, what was that? He goes, I was about to name, and I said, that's not the name. And a different name came to my head. Because I went to check with my wife, she's like, yeah, that sounds right. And he went back and he named they named the child. It was a different name. They planned on a name, and he said, that's not the name. And he checked with her, fine, he went back and he gave a completely different name. I think that kid just joined the Israeli army, by the way. Okay, yeah.
Question about names. What if the father, that's happening, and he decides to change the name and he changes it without his wife's permission? And then, can you take back a name?
You can't take back a name once the child... Well, it's a good question. At what point does a name become your name? So you need to be called that name. I read once, I think, at least 10 times. Once a name has been used 10 times, that becomes your given name. Can you change your name? Yeah. There's a process. Open a siddur. There's a process by which you can actually change a name. But you've got to be careful with that. Because you could be changing the person's mazal. You can't just start adding names. That's a big deal. I mean, wait for a person to be really sick. Just like I got man flu, and I'm suddenly changing a name. The person gets very, very sick. You change the name because you're really, neshama has the word Shem inside it, we said already, right? You're changing the person's mazal. Yeah.
When a convert chooses their name, to change their mazal.
Absolutely, yes. When a convert chooses a Hebrew name, I had a good friend of mine who converted. His name was Peter, and he went through he's from Eastern Europe. And he went, I was in yeshiva with him, I was in camp with him. And he went through the Chumash Yisrael, and I like this name. It's actually these parashiot. And he changed his name to Betzalel.
Really?
Betzalel, yeah. And he didn't know, it's a nice name, Betzalel. He chose it, I was a fine name, and he happens to be very into woodwork and making things. Betzalel made the Mishkan. So he chose a name. Beautiful name. Betzalel, right? In the shade of Hashem. He reflects HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So a convert does, actually they start brand new when they choose a name. I went to a class of, who's that basketball player? Amari Stoudemire. So he came to a few of my shiurim, and we were talking, and I said, how did you get the Hebrew name Yehoshaphat? That's his Hebrew name, Yehoshaphat. It's an unusual name. You heard that name before? Yes, it is. Not every name in the Bible we use. Yehoshaphat. So I went up to him, he said, I thought, so he said, I went to a rabbi, and I said, I wanted a regular name, and he said, no. Your name is Yehoshaphat. It's like, okay. I was doing a wedding of a boy a number of years ago to a girl. I was actually involved in the shidduch, and I was doing the wedding, and we were about to write the ketubah, and the rabbi said, I don't like his name. His name was Omri. Omri. Omri is actually one of the kings of Israel, but he did some bad stuff and some good stuff. So we made a decision. We renamed him. We renamed him from Omri. It's not a bad name, Omri. Just for him, he said no to Noach. So we changed his name, and he still goes by Omri, but his real Hebrew name that he was known, we had to call him out 10 times. And the ketubah, I wrote Noach. Changed the name. On the spot. Why? He just chose Noach. But Omri had a certain mazal that wasn't so good for him, and we changed the name. And the rabbi was a big rabbi. I won't mention his name, but I know him very, very well. He was at the wedding, and he said, change the name. And we changed it. I saw Ovadia Yosef wrote about a name. I read this recently. Oh my God, I can't remember the name. It was Tal or Talia. He said he should add.
Oh, yes. Tal changed a lot of, like, I know a Tal who changed her name to Talia.
Yeah.
To add,
Hashem's name with Yud K at the end. Yeah, I think he speaks about it. I saw a video of him speaking recently. Not speaking recently, he's dead for years. But a video of him speaking. And someone asked him and he said, change the name. I don't like the name.
Okay, if names are completely related to a person's masal, isn't it very like, I wouldn't say like controversial, like mean to name someone after another person that had like an awful life?
This is a big, big question. This is a big, big question. Do you name people who, let's say, lo aleinu, die young in the Holocaust and stuff? So some people do it anyway because they died as martyrs. And they say it's a big schut. Many people, if a person had a very, very difficult, challenging life, they add a name. Yeah. Now, that does sound very interesting. And it goes like this. When you add a name, you're not naming after that person, you're using that person's name. It's different. That is how the person... I listen, you want to. You want to call that person by both names. I have a friend whose name is Chaim David. Good friend of mine. His mother got very, very sick with one of the kids while she was pregnant. Very, very sick. And he told me they went to a big Rav in Eretz Yisrael, a big Mekubal. It may even be the Baba Sali. It was someone very, very, very big. And he wrote back. They didn't go to him. They wrote to him and he wrote back and said, since you call all your children by both names, that means you're going to get through this and the child's going to be healthy and fine. You're going to be okay. There's a schut for calling kids. I don't. The only child I call by both names is my son. I don't know why. And the only time I call my daughters by both names is when I'm angry with them. Right? It's the only time we got, like, Rachel Batya, do me a favor, right? But there is some inyan, if you name a child with two names, but the custom people don't do it. We just use a kinui, we just shorten the name, just call them by one name. But really, the name presents mazal. If you're able to call kids, my son, his name is Moshe Simcha, I can't call him, it drives me crazy. I don't know who it is, I must call him by, and if someone calls him by one name, I can't stand it. I don't know what it is. I have to call him Moshe Simcha.
Well, the people that have the same name have something in common.
That's a very good question. Do all people have the same name have something in common? So, yes and no. There is a little bit of that neshama that comes to them, but it's not just your name, it's the name of your mother and your family. So when you go to a Mekubal or a big Hasidic Rebbe, they won't just look at your name, they look at the father's name, the mother's name. There's a whole catalog of stuff that goes with it. They're able to read names. They look at a piece of paper. I mean, I've been through this. I've gone to see great rabbis that look at my Hebrew name and my mother's name, and they'll tell you about yourself. There's certain Ruach HaKodesh that comes to them. I've been there. I've met rabbis who don't know me from Adam, and they look at my name, and I'm like, whoa, how do they know that? That was unbelievable. There are such people able to do that. But you don't want to just name your kids. You should ask a question to an authority before you name your kids, just to make sure that what came through came from the right side. Yeah.
Some people have the custom of naming after people who are alive, and other people
Yes.
say, like, Chasv'Shalom, I would never do that.
Yeah.
So is there like bad mazal of naming after?
Not at all. Most Sephardim name after the living. Ashkenazim name after the deceased. The real minhag, if you want to go back, is naming after the living. I don't know what happened to the Ashkenazim, right? How they changed it, but that seems to be the exception. There are examples in history we see from the time of the Gemara of people who name after the parents, the grandparents, while they're still alive. There is such an inyan to do that. Ashkenazim, the idea of naming after living is like abhorrent to them. They can't understand it. They can't, like my wife is Ashkenazi, well, not anymore, but her parents are. And when we named the kids, we named them after my parents, who Baruch Hashem still alive. My son's named after my father, my oldest daughter named after my mother. And the in-laws are like, don't use our names. The idea of using the names, like when we're gone, at Me'er V'Esrim, you start using our names. Me personally, what a shame. Right? You want to see a little bit of nachas, right? You want to see a little bit of nachat. But they will not, they said absolutely do not use our names.